So I just want to double click on everything David just said and zoom really closely in on one of the key things he said: empowered to make decisions. Because fundamentally, I think that's the most important part of creating empowered teams: decision making. But let's be honest, most teams aren't empowered. Your leaders will all say you are, but it's fake empowerment. The second you look behind it, you have this Potemkin, that's an American word for these facade, these villages that were built for movie sets, where you look behind, there's just some sticks holding up the front. And that's what most product teams look like when you start looking at them properly. They're fake. They're not really empowered. Increasingly with AI, we're seeing this come into sharp relief. We're peanut buttering AI across everything. It's like, let's add some AI to this, let's add it to something else. We don't care about creating value. We need some AI. Now, one little caveat. There may be some value for you as an organization for adding it to get the next funding round. But let's be honest then, that's the context. We need money to survive, so we need the funding round, and our investors expect AI. Cool, give me that context. Now I can create something valuable instead of just adding a chatbot like everybody else. So we kind of reveal when we see these pushes, or can we just add a chatbot? We're kind of lifting the covers and seeing that disempowerment, that reality of something's being forced on you by leadership. And you might spot that all my slides are AI generated. But that's the key thing. It's a tool that I use constantly. I'm not saying don't use AI. I'll come back to it a little more later. But what happens in these teams, these disempowered teams, is that things get second-guessed. I'm sure you've all been there. You've done the work. You've done all the discovery work. You have this really high-value problem and this really awesome solution for it. You're at the 11th hour. You're getting close. And then you have a meeting with a CRO. And the CRO looks and says, I've been in this industry for 25 years. Nobody wants that. It's dead. Yet, it was probably really valuable. One, you should have probably done some more stakeholder alignment. See Bruce McCarthy from earlier. But, like, that happens. Opinions often overrule the data or the evidence because we rely on that human intuition. And I'm not saying don't use intuition. I'll come back to that again later. It's super important, but we've got to make sure we put it in context. So who am I? Well, I'm Phil Hornby, as Joe, or Moiter as I know him, introduced me. I'm often heard saying, it depends, which is the only answer a product manager can give to any question ever. I'm a coach and this sort of thing, but as he also said, I've just gone back to doing product work. I am leaning into the super IC narrative. When I started product work officially with the title 15, 16 years ago, I was an ICPM with a $300 million P&L responsibility. That was normal. Let that soak in for a second, product people who've been in it for not that long. The business side, the P&L part, was normal. For the last 10 years, product people haven't been doing that. I think that's a mistake. And we're seeing the pendulum swing back because the business part is the lifeblood of your organization. And the decisions you're making, the discovery you're doing is all about driving the business. Customer and business value is your job. Kind of already said this one, because David stole my thunder. Empowered teams are all about their ability to make decisions that stick. And being handed a roadmap is the complete opposite of that. Marty Kagan often complains about teams being handed a roadmap. He hates roadmaps because that's what happens with them. but they are a useful tool if you are driving it, if you are justifying it in the right way. Because the roadmap should be the direction of travel for your product. It's the story of your product. And it is a decision. In fact, as Moita mentioned, I have a YouTube channel called Talking Roadmaps, all about road mapping. But what I realized after 50 or so episodes is roadmaps are just an articulation of the decisions that we're making as a team. And so if we're making bad decisions, we're going to make a bad roadmap. But we're not free to do what the heck we want. You know, people use terms like autonomy as if it's the same as empowerment. Hint, it's not. The agile world loves the term autonomy, and then every team member that hears it thinks, great, no one's allowed to tell me to do anything. I just get to do what the heck I like. Empowerment is autonomy within a scope, with context, with constraints, with criteria for success. We know directionally where we're going. It's empowered by better leadership, where leaders give you problems to solve, not solutions to deliver. That's really hard for leaders to do. I've been one. They feel like they've worked their way up. They know what's needed. So let's just do this. But the good ones realize it and step back. They help bring the clarity. Like, I'm doing an IC role, but it's still a relatively senior IC role at the moment. And what I have realized in the last month is the most valuable, high-leverage thing I can do is bring clarity. I'm writing 1 to 6 page Amazon-style memos. I'm literally going around the organization, finding problems and saying that one can be left alone, that one needs dealing with. And then bringing the clarity of what do we need to do on it. Talking to all the stakeholders, getting all the data that I can to bring that clarity for us to make a decision. Bruce earlier mentioned DAISY. Great framework, although I have to say, I hate any decision-making framework that has D that's not decider. But as long as you know what it means, it works. Decision-making is super important, and knowing who owns the decision is important. Leaders making the decision of which problems are worth solving is their job. Then understanding the problem in detail and figuring out the solution, that's where the teams come in. But we all know that decisions get reversed. And here's, I forgot my story here, so I'm just going to keep moving because I know I've got limited time. I've mentioned autonomy, and like a pinch of AI is the classic thing that people are trying to add, like, oh, we can do so much more, we can be faster, we're autonomous and able to do so much more. We'll go the wrong direction. The real foundation of autonomy is trust, getting out of the way, and the ingredient inside that is high quality decisions. And I want to contrast that with good decisions. A high quality decision and a good decision are not the same thing. A good decision is a decision that gives the outcome you're hoping for. You cannot guarantee that, ever. Let it just settle in or sink in. You cannot guarantee a good decision. What you can do is improve your odds. And that's where high quality decisions come in. So you're going to ask me, what's a high quality decision then? I'm glad you asked. A high quality decision, there's a framework for this, and I'm not inventing anything here. I was taught this framework by a guy called Jonathan Gowins, who's a product leader at a company called Openly in the US. He's awesome. He's done far more research into decision making than me, so I learned from him. Firstly, they're well framed. They set that context, they set the constraints, they set the criteria for success. They're framed with the vision and the strategy. As David mentioned a few minutes ago, you understand directionally where you're going and what you're aiming to achieve. They consider options. There is never a single perfect answer. In fact, there are probably 10 equally good answers. But one might be slightly better for you because of your context or your constraints. Show of hands, how many people use Teresa Torres' opportunity solution tree? You're doing this already. That is a methodology for considering your options. In high-impact product team or impact-led product teams, Matt LeMay suggests a minimum of 3 scenarios to consider. 2 becomes an either-or conversation. 3 becomes, it's more nuanced. I might take something from here, something from there, and I can learn, and I compare, and I contrast, and I find better options through it. And so explicitly saying, these are the options I've considered, and why. One, it also cuts the conversation shorter a little bit because they don't start coming up with all those ideas again when you're trying to move forwards. You've thought about it. And then we've got to back it up. And I talk about evidence-informed decisions, not data-driven decisions, not data-informed. Data tells you nothing. I can make data show anything I want. I'm very good at that. I'm very good at telling the story as a product manager, so I can kind of get the answer I want. Data always needs interpretation and presentation. And so I've switched to talking about evidence. And again, something that's taught by Ravi Mehta here. He talks about these 3 lenses. You have your data, your quantitative, your feedback or anecdotes, as Amazon will call it, the qualitative, that helps you understand what the data tells you. And then we are humans. We have intuition. We have tacit knowledge. And I hate to tell you this, product people, you're paid to have opinions. You're paid to have judgment. You're paid to understand your market and bring a perspective on what makes sense in your context. That's your intuition. The key thing is making it tacit. Because right now, it's sat in your head, and only you know it, and only you know why you think it. You've got to bring it out and get it on the page to explain it. We did a workshop yesterday, and in one of the groups, they were talking about, I used the example of like an Uber-type product. One of the personas they could interview was a rural user. And there was a concern about technology capability of users and usability in the product. That was part of the scenario. And one of the people on the table said, well, if we understand the rural user better, then maybe that will help us because rural users are potentially less tech savvy. Now, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it was an intuition that they had that they could express and say, this is part of our reasoning. And because you bring it out to make it explicit, you can then have the conversation to understand, does this stack up? Can I get any evidence to support it? But I can tell you now, every single one of you has got a bias in your head around every bit of data you look at that's informed by your, let's say, at least 20 years of life in the room. And for some of us, a lot more. But it's also not the hallucinations that come from AI. Don't just ask AI for the answer, because it will make shit up. The more information you give it, the better it will do. The more context, the more data you can put in, the better it works, in my experience. Don't trust it. You've got to consider the trade-offs. That's part of the high-quality decision-making. If I go this way, what does it mean? If I go that way, what does it mean? And then you've got to tell the story. Humans are hardwired to tell stories and to learn and understand from stories. We've been passing knowledge for 100,000 years that way. We've only been writing things down and the general populace understanding them for a few hundred. That oral tradition of storytelling is baked into how our brains work. So if you want to convince someone and get them to understand things, learn how to tell stories. And that is part of articulating your decision. But then lastly, you've got to commit to take action. A decision without action is a lie. Action without a decision is chaos. So high quality at work, what's it look like? Well, it looks like you going to do the discovery, running the experiments, getting the evidence, and then expressing your opinion, your intuition on top of it. Maybe you're worried about losing market share, and you go and do some research. You think, well, we could try PLG, we could add some features, we could drop the price. You do the work. And I've seen this with real clients of mine, where they do that work, and ultimately, one of them came to the conclusion, we're going to drop the price, which for the CEO was not a popular opinion. But once they could show, we're dropping it now, but we're going to bring these other capabilities online that will take 6 to 9 months that will allow us to add add-on, increase the ARPU, the revenue, they got on board because it was about survival, not just about, it was an existential crisis to their business. Their market share was dropping so much. But knowing what was the right course of action, dropping their price could have had a really long-term impact. AI won't answer it all for you, as I've said, but you need to use it. It is table stakes. A computer, as the classic IBM quote goes, cannot be held accountable for a decision. So if you choose to delegate a decision to the AI, you're still responsible because you made the decision to delegate the decision. So decide with AI, use it. It's the perfect sparring partner. Instead of stopping your colleague from getting any work done, have a chat with your AI. Bash the ideas around. Ask it to ask you questions to clarify. It's super powerful that way. And expect that your boss is then going to throw whatever you present to them at the AI and inspect it to say, what's wrong with it? Leaders are going to challenge it. They're going to ask you, what's going on wrong? And I've seen this in so many companies. One of my favorite coaches, he does what we call a flyby all the time for his teams. He goes in and he really digs deep to inspect their knowledge, their understanding, their decision making. But then he can trust them on most things because he gets to understand their decision making. Do they make good decisions? Are they making high quality decisions? You're probably scared of making decisions. I get it. Your leaders are scared of letting you make decisions. You need to be able to take risks. And you need to be able to fail. You need to be able to make some of those bad decisions based on the information you had at hand that you can justify. Ultimately, your leaders need to make it clear what the priorities are, force you to tell stories, give you the support, and inspect your thinking to make sure you are doing the right job. Said it enough. And if you are a leader, have your teams back. Inspect their thinking, but then when they are challenged, support them. You should be there in their corner with the gloves on when the CRO turns up saying, bring it on. To support your teams, empower your teams. That's me.